The cry of a baby pierced the frigid dawn air of Roswell, New Mexico Territory, in the spring of 1873, startling Father Thomas Moore from his morning prayers. The aging priest shuffled to the weathered oak doors of St. Joseph's Church, pulling his woolen shawl tighter against the unseasonable chill. There on the steps, wrapped in a tattered quilt with only a small silver locket around her neck, lay a newborn infant girl with eyes as blue as the New Mexico sky. "Lord, have mercy," Father Moore whispered, lifting the tiny bundle. The child had clearly been left within the hour, her cheeks still pink with life, despite the morning chill. No note accompanied her, no explanation for her abandonment, just a silver locket bearing the engraving of a single rose. That same morning, Nathaniel Xanders rode into town, trail dust coating his leather vest and wide-brimmed hat. At 27, he'd already lived several lifetimes' worth of adventure and hardship. After losing his family's ranch in Texas to drought and debt, he'd spent years driving cattle, hunting bounties when necessary, and building a reputation as a man whose word was as solid as the Guadalupe Mountains. Nathaniel's arrival in Roswell was meant to be temporary, just long enough to deliver a herd of cattle to the railroad depot before moving on to wherever the wind carried him next. But fate had different plans when his path crossed with the abandoned baby at St. Joseph's. What will happen to her? Nathaniel asked Father Moore, who had welcomed the trail-weary cowboy with coffee after Sunday service. The infant lay sleeping in a makeshift cradle, her tiny fingers curled into fists. "I've sent word to the orphanage in Santa Fe, but it's overcrowded already. They won't come for her for weeks, maybe months." The priest sighed heavily. "I'm an old man, Mr. Xanders. Caring for an infant alone isn't easy." Nathaniel approached the cradle, removing his hat as if in the presence of something sacred. The baby stirred, blinking up at him with eyes that seemed to hold the entire sky. When her tiny hand wrapped around his calloused finger, something shifted inside him, a space opening where he thought nothing remained but dust and regret. "I'll take her," he said, surprising himself as much as the priest. But you're a drifter, a cowboy." Nathaniel smiled faintly. "I had a family once. I know what it means." He looked down at the child, his voice softening. "I'll be your family, little one." Father Moore studied the tall cowboy. "This isn't like adopting a stray dog, Mr. Xanders. This is a child, a lifetime commitment." "I understand that, Father." Nathaniel's voice held a conviction that brooked no argument. "My sister died in childbirth 2 years ago. I've helped raise her boy until my brother-in-law remarried. I'm not without experience." After much discussion and a promise to remain in Roswell at least until the baby was stronger, Father Moore reluctantly agreed. He baptized the child that afternoon, naming her Louise Bella for beautiful, Louise for light. Nathaniel added his surname, making her Louise Xanders on the handwritten certificate the priest drew up. Nathaniel rented rooms above the general store owned by widow Margaret Wells, who was delighted to help with the baby during the day while he sought more permanent work. The arrangement was meant to last a few weeks at most. Weeks turned into months. Nathaniel found work at the town's livery stable, then as security for the stage coach line, and eventually bought a small tract of land just outside town with money he'd saved from his bounty hunting days. He built a modest 2-room cabin with his own hands, adding a small covered porch where he would sit in the evenings with Bella in his arms, telling her stories about the stars. By Bella's first birthday, few in Roswell remembered a time when Nathaniel Xanders hadn't been part of their community. The solemn cowboy with the little girl who followed him everywhere like a devoted shadow, once she learned to walk. Years passed in the rhythm of seasons. Nathaniel never spoke of finding Bella a real family or sending her to an orphanage. When asked about the child's mother, he simply said, "She's with the angels," and left it at that. To the world, and eventually to Bella herself, he was simply Pa, the steady, quiet man who braided her hair each morning before school, taught her to ride almost before she could walk, and scared away monsters under the bed with the same determined efficiency with which he handled troublemakers at the saloon, where he occasionally worked as security. By 1891, 18-year-old Bella had blossomed into a striking young woman with her father's quiet strength and a fierce independence that both frustrated and delighted Nathaniel. She helped manage their small ranch, which had grown to include 30 head of cattle, a dozen horses, and enough land to make them comfortable if not wealthy. She could ride, shoot, and track as well as any man in the county, but also assisted the town's doctor often enough that many expected she might pursue medicine herself one day. "You've had another letter from that medical college in Denver," Nathaniel said one evening, setting the envelope beside her plate as they sat down to dinner. "Third one this month." Bella tucked a strand of chestnut hair behind her ear, her blue eyes still as vivid as the day he'd found her lifting to his face. "They're persistent. They want you. Can't say I blame them." He served himself potatoes, trying to keep his voice neutral. "Dr. Hartman says you have a gift." More than he ever had. "Pa, I've been setting aside money. Not a fortune, but enough for tuition and boarding for at least a year. You could work for the rest." Bella reached across the table, placing her hand over his. "I'm not leaving you to manage this place alone." "I managed just fine before you were big enough to help," he reminded her with a gentle smile. "A woman with your mind shouldn't be wasting it wrangling cattle and patching up cowboys. I'm not wasting anything." Her chin lifted in the stubborn gesture he knew all too well. "Denver's a long way, and this is home." What neither said aloud was the truth they both acknowledged silently. Nathaniel wasn't young anymore. At 45, the years of hard living before Bella had aged him beyond his years. His back troubled him after long days in the saddle, and the old bullet wound in his shoulder ached fiercely before rainstorms. They both knew he couldn't manage the ranch alone, not anymore. The next morning, a stranger rode onto their property just as Bella was returning from checking fences on the north pasture. Tall and broad-shouldered, he sat his horse with the easy grace of someone born to the saddle. His clothing was trail-worn but of good quality, and the Winchester rifle in his saddle holster was well maintained. "Morning, miss," he called, removing his hat to reveal sandy brown hair and eyes the color of aged whiskey. "Name's Benjamin Lambert, looking for Nathaniel Xanders." "May I ask what business you have with my father?" Bella asked, keeping a cautious distance. Strangers looking for Nathaniel sometimes brought trouble from his bounty hunting days. "Railroad business, madam. I represent the Santa Fe line. We're looking to buy grazing rights along the proposed route." Bella gestured toward the house. "He's in the barn. I'll take you to him." As they walked, Benjamin Lambert studied the young woman beside him. "Pardon my saying so, but you don't much resemble your father." "I favor my mother," Bella replied automatically, the practiced answer to a common observation. Nathaniel emerged from the barn, wiping his hands on a rag. His eyes narrowed slightly at the stranger before recognition dawned. "Ben Lambert, last I saw you, you were barely old enough to ride." Benjamin broke into a wide grin. "Uncle Jesse said I'd find you in these parts. It's been a long time, Mr. Xanders." "You know each other?" Bella asked, looking between them. "His uncle and I rode together years back," Nathaniel explained, "before you came along. Jesse Lambert saved my hide more than once." "And you returned the favor twice as often, according to him," Benjamin added. He'll be sorry he missed you. He's overseeing the eastern section while I handle this territory." Over coffee at the kitchen table, Benjamin explained the railroad's plans. The proposed route would cut through the southeast corner of Nathaniel's property, not enough to disrupt their operations, but the company was willing to pay handsomely for the right-of-way and additional grazing access. "It's a fair offer," Nathaniel admitted, studying the papers. "More than fair. The railroad's expanding fast. We need reliable partners in these territories," Benjamin explained. He glanced at Bella. "Your father's reputation precedes him. A man of his word is worth his weight in gold to us." Bella watched the young man carefully. At perhaps 25, he spoke with the authority of someone much older, but there was an earnestness about him she found appealing. Unlike many men who visited their ranch, he addressed her directly when discussing business matters rather than speaking solely to her father. "You'll stay for dinner," she said when the business was concluded. It wasn't a question. Benjamin's smile reached his eyes, crinkling the corners. "I'd be honored, Miss Xanders." As Bella prepared the meal, she found herself unusually aware of the visitor's presence on the porch with her father. Their deep laughter carried through the open windows, along with snippets of stories about people and places she'd never heard Nathaniel mention. It struck her suddenly how little she knew of her father's life before her. He rarely spoke of those days, and she'd never pressed him. "Your daughter's remarkable," Benjamin said to Nathaniel as they watched the sunset paint the distant mesas gold. "Most young ladies would have sent me to the house without a word, not assessed me like a seasoned ranch hand first." Nathaniel's mouth quirked. "Bella's not most young ladies. She can outride, outshoot, and outthink most men twice her age." "So I gathered. Is there a husband in the picture?" Nathaniel raised an eyebrow. "Getting ahead of yourself, aren't you, boy?" Benjamin flushed. "Just wondering about the operation here, for the railroad's records." Hum. Nathaniel wasn't fooled. She's had suitors, none she deemed worthy of her time. Bella knows her own mind. "Like her father," Benjamin observed. Something flickered across Nathaniel's face, a shadow quickly suppressed. "She's her own person, always has been." During dinner, Benjamin spoke of the railroad's plans for the territory, new towns springing up along the route, opportunities for ranchers to ship directly to eastern markets, the changing landscape of the West as it became increasingly connected to the rest of the country. "It won't be the frontier much longer," he concluded. "Not like it was when men like your father first came here." "Some would say that's progress," Bella replied, refilling his coffee cup. "Is that what you'd say?" Benjamin asked, genuinely curious. She considered this. "I'd say change is inevitable. Whether it's progress depends on who benefits and who's left behind." Benjamin studied her with newfound respect. "That's remarkably clear-eyed." "Bella sees things as they are," Nathaniel said quietly. "Always has." After dinner, Benjamin reluctantly announced he needed to return to town. "I have meetings with other landowners tomorrow. The company's lodged me at the hotel for the next 2 weeks while I complete the surveys. Will you be at the Founders' Day celebration on Saturday?" Bella asked, surprising herself with the directness of the question. "I hadn't planned on it, but I believe I can arrange to be there," Benjamin replied, his eyes holding hers a moment longer than necessary. "If there's dancing, might I request the honor of a turn around the floor, Miss Xanders?" "You might," she answered, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "Though I should warn you, I learned from cowboys, not dancing masters." "All the better," he said. "I've found fancy steps don't much help when the fiddler really gets going." After Benjamin left, Nathaniel and Bella sat on the porch as was their custom, watching the stars emerge. The comfortable silence between them had always been one of Bella's favorite things about their relationship, No need to fill the air with unnecessary words. "He seems a decent sort," Nathaniel finally said. "Jesse always spoke well of his family." "The railroad offer is generous," Bella replied, deliberately misunderstanding. "It is." Nathaniel's weathered hands rested on the arms of his chair. "But that's not what I'm talking about, and you know it." Bella sighed. "He's pleasant enough company." "Pleasant enough had you watching the road long after his dust settled," Nathaniel observed dryly. When Bella didn't respond, he added more gently, "It would do you good to spend time with people your own age, Belle. You're too much alone out here with just an old cowboy for company." "You're not old," she protested automatically. "Older than I'd like to be." He looked out at the darkening land. "I've been thinking on what you said about that medical college." Bella stiffened. "I'm not going to Denver." "Maybe not Denver, but Roswell's growing. The railroad will bring more people. Dr. Hartman isn't getting any younger. He'd take you on formally if you asked." The idea wasn't without appeal. Bella had assisted the town doctor often enough to know she had both aptitude and interest in medicine. But the thought of leaving the ranch, of leaving Nathaniel to manage alone, felt like abandonment. "We'll see," she said noncommittally, the same answer she'd been giving for months. The next few days passed in the usual routine of ranch work, but Bella found her thoughts drifting frequently to Benjamin Lambert. She told herself it was merely curiosity about an outsider, someone connected to her father's mysterious past. Yet when Saturday arrived, she found herself taking unusual care with her appearance, wearing the blue dress she'd sewn for last Christmas and arranging her hair in a more elaborate style than her usual practical braid. Nathaniel noticed, but said nothing until they were in the wagon heading to town. "You look nice, Belle," she flushed slightly. "It's a celebration, seemed appropriate. Hum." His eyes crinkled at the corners. "Nothing to do with certain railroad men who might be there. Don't be ridiculous, Pa. Never said it was ridiculous." He flicked the reins gently. "Just an observation." Roswell's Founders' Day celebration filled the town square with music, food, and the largest gathering of people from surrounding ranches and farms that occurred all year. Lanterns hung from wires strung between buildings, casting a warm glow as the sun began its descent. Tables groaned under the weight of potluck dishes, and a wooden platform had been erected for dancing. Benjamin found them almost immediately, looking considerably more polished than he had on his visit to the ranch. His hair was neatly trimmed, his shirt crisp, and his boots freshly polished. "Miss Xanders," he said, his eyes warming as they took in Bella's appearance. "Mr. Xanders, I was hoping to find you both." "Mr. Lambert," Bella acknowledged, suddenly feeling uncharacteristically shy. "Saved you a place at our table," Nathaniel said, clapping the younger man on the shoulder. "Come on, then. Mrs. Whittaker's fried chicken waits for no man." The evening unfolded pleasantly as Benjamin seamlessly integrated himself into their circle. He charmed the older women with courteous attention, discussed cattle prices intelligently with the ranchers, and made the children laugh with sleight-of-hand coin tricks. Throughout it all, Bella observed him with increasing interest, noting how different he seemed from the cowhands and farmers' sons who usually sought her attention. When the fiddle players struck up a lively reel, Benjamin appeared at her side. "I believe you mentioned something about cowboy dancing," he said, offering his hand. Bella hesitated only briefly before placing her fingers in his. "I warned you I'm no society belle." His smile deepened. "Thank God for that. I've danced with society belles. Most of them couldn't tell a steer from a heifer if their lives depended on it." The dance floor was crowded, but Benjamin led her skillfully through the steps, his hand warm and steady at her waist. Bella was surprised to find herself enjoying the closeness, the simple pleasure of moving in harmony with another person. "You dance well for a railroad man," she remarked as they circled each other. "And you dance gracefully for someone who claims to have learned from cowboys," he returned. "Though perhaps your cowboys are unusually refined in these parts," Bella laughed. "Hardly, but Pa insisted I learn properly. Said a lady should know how to dance even if she spends most days in the saddle. Your father is a wise man." Benjamin's expression grew more thoughtful. "May I ask you something, Miss Xanders?" "You may ask. I may not answer." "Fair enough." He guided her through a turn. "Why haven't you left Roswell? Dr. Hartman speaks of your skill with patients as if you're already a physician. The medical college in Denver has written to you repeatedly. Yet you stay." The directness of the question startled her. "You've been asking about me." "I have," he admitted without shame. "Is that so surprising? Most men who show interest ask about my cooking or my disposition, not my professional ambitions. I'm not most men." His eyes held hers steadily. "And you didn't answer my question." The music ended before she could respond, and they were separated as partners changed for the next dance. But Benjamin's question lingered in her mind throughout the evening, through 3 more shared dances, and the walk to the punch bowl where they stood slightly apart from the crowd. "My father needs me," she finally said, answering hours late. "The ranch is too much for one person." Benjamin nodded slowly. "And you believe he would want you to sacrifice your future for his comfort?" "It's not a sacrifice to care for family," she replied, a hint of defensiveness creeping into her voice. "No," he agreed, "but perhaps there are ways to do both." Before she could ask what he meant, Nathaniel approached. "Time we headed back, Belle. Storm brewing to the west." Indeed, the distant horizon flickered occasionally with lightning, and the air had taken on the heavy stillness that preceded rain. They said their goodbyes, but as they reached the wagon, Benjamin appeared again. "I'd like to call on you properly, Miss Xanders," he said. "With your father's permission." Nathaniel looked between the 2 young people, something unreadable crossing his face before he nodded once. "Sunday dinner." "After church." "I'll be there," Benjamin promised, his eyes never leaving Bella's face. As they drove home, the first fat raindrops began to fall, pattering on the wagon's canvas cover. Nathaniel was unusually quiet, his profile illuminated occasionally by lightning flashes. "You don't approve," Bella finally said. "Didn't say that." "You didn't have to. I can read you like a book, Pa." Nathaniel sighed heavily. "It's not about approval, Belle. Lambert seems a fine man. Jesse wouldn't have family who weren't." He paused. "But his life is with the railroad. Moving place to place, building something that's always moving forward. And you think I belong here, static and unchanging," she concluded, hurt coloring her voice. "No." His answer was firm. "I think you belong wherever your heart and mind can grow. I'm just not sure that's alongside a railroad man." He glanced at her. "Or alongside an aging cowboy on a small ranch, for that matter." The implications of his words hung between them for the remainder of the journey home. By the time they reached the ranch, the storm had broken in earnest, forcing them to make a dash for the porch. Soaked and breathless, they stood in the doorway as lightning split the sky. "I would never abandon you," Bella said suddenly, needing him to understand. "Not for Benjamin Lambert or medical school or anything else." Nathaniel's expression softened as he brushed a wet strand of hair from her face. "I know that, Belle, but that's not the same as living your life." He moved to light the lamps. "Get changed before you catch cold. We'll talk more tomorrow." But tomorrow brought unexpected complications. The storm had caused a breach in the creek that bordered their property, flooding the lower pasture where most of their cattle grazed. Nathaniel and Bella spent the early hours moving the herd to higher ground, working in mud up to their knees as rain continued to fall intermittently. By midday, Bella was checking fences along the eastern boundary when she heard hoofbeats approaching. Benjamin rode up, looking concerned. "The bridge at Crystal Creek washed out," he said without preamble. "I was worried when you didn't make it to church. Your father's at the south pasture." "How did you know?" Ran into Miguel from the bar T. Said he'd seen Nathaniel heading that way with tools. Benjamin dismounted. "I came to offer help. The railroad crew has equipment that could be useful if you need to divert water." Bella studied him, noting his practical clothing and the tools strapped to his saddle. "You came prepared." "I've seen my share of flash floods in railroad work. Water can destroy in minutes what took months to build." He looked around. "Your land held up well, all things considered." Pa chose the site carefully. Most of it's on high enough ground. She hesitated, then nodded toward the southern ridge. "But we could use help with the fence line there. 2 pairs of hands would make it go faster." They worked side by side for hours, repairing broken fence posts and stringing new wire where the old had snapped. Benjamin proved himself capable and efficient, anticipating needs before Bella voiced them, and suggesting improvements to the original design that would better withstand future storms. "Where did you learn ranch work?" she asked as they paused to drink from their canteens. "I thought you were a railroad man through and through." "Grew up on a farm in Kansas," he replied, wiping sweat from his brow despite the cool air. 5 brothers, 2 sisters. We raised horses mainly. I was the only one who caught the wanderlust." A smile touched his lips. "Much to my mother's eternal dismay. She wanted you to stay on the farm. She wanted all her children within shouting distance of her kitchen. 7 out of 8 isn't bad, I suppose." He handed her a nail as she positioned a board. "What about you? Always planned to stay on the ranch?" Bella drove the nail with precise strokes. "I've never really known anything else. Pa made sure I had schooling, but this land, it's home." "Home isn't always a place," Benjamin observed. "Sometimes it's people, sometimes it's purpose." She glanced at him, struck by the observation. "You sound like someone who's given it considerable thought. Building railroad towns makes you think about what makes a place worth staying in." He held the post steady as she secured it. "It's never just the buildings or the land. It's something less tangible." They worked in companionable silence until the fence was mended, then rode together to find Nathaniel. The older man had just finished reinforcing a small dam of stones and branches to divert water from the most vulnerable section of pasture. He straightened slowly when he saw them approaching, one hand going to his lower back. "Lambert," he acknowledged, "didn't expect to see you today. Thought you could use an extra hand." Benjamin dismounted. "Bridge is out at Crystal Creek. Might take a few days to repair." Nathaniel nodded. "Appreciate the help. We've got most of the urgent work done now." He looked at the sky, where the clouds were finally breaking. "Should be able to assess the full damage by tomorrow." Back at the house, Bella insisted Benjamin stay for the meal she'd planned for their Sunday dinner, even if it was now being served on Monday and consisted mainly of cold ham and biscuits, rather than the roast she'd intended to prepare. "This is better than what I'd have gotten at the hotel," Benjamin assured her, accepting seconds with enthusiasm. "Railroad dining is long on quantity but short on quality most days." As they ate, Benjamin shared stories of his 3 years with the railroad, the challenges of surveying in hostile territory, the politics of town placement, the colorful characters who followed the tracks hoping to strike it rich in newly accessible territories. His tales were engaging and often funny, but Bella noticed he never portrayed himself as the hero, instead giving credit to colleagues and local guides who had helped navigate difficulties. After dinner, with the lamps lit against the early evening darkness, Nathaniel excused himself to check on a mare about to foal, leaving Bella and Benjamin alone in the small parlor. An awkward silence fell between them. "I should go," Benjamin finally said, rising. "It's a long ride back to town." "Wait," Bella stood too. "You asked me yesterday why I've stayed in Roswell." She moved to a small side table and opened the drawer, removing the silver locket she rarely wore but always kept close. "This is part of the reason." She handed him the tarnished piece of jewelry. Benjamin opened it carefully, finding it empty of any portrait or lock of hair. "I don't understand." "It's all I have from my birth mother," Bella explained quietly. "I was left on the church steps as an infant. Father Moore found me. Pa Nathaniel took me in." The words felt strange on her tongue. She'd rarely told the story aloud. "He didn't have to. He was just passing through Roswell, but he stayed because of me, built this ranch because of me." "How could I leave him?" Benjamin's expression softened as understanding dawned. "He's the only family you've ever known." "Yes." She took back the locket, closing it gently. "I've always known I was adopted. Pa never hid that, but he's been my father in every way that matters since before I can remember. I owe him everything." "Does he see it that way, as a debt to be repaid?" The question caught her off guard. "Of course not. That's not what I meant." "Isn't it?" Benjamin's voice was gentle. "You speak of obligation, of owing. Has it occurred to you that what he wants most might be your happiness, not your presence?" "You don't understand." "I understand family devotion, Bella." It was the first time he'd used her given name, and the intimacy of it silenced her momentarily. "But I also understand that love doesn't chain people in place. It gives them wings." Outside, a horse's whinny broke the tension between them. Nathaniel was returning. "Think about what I've said," Benjamin requested, reaching for his hat. "That's all I ask, and know that my interest in you isn't diminished by learning about your origins. If anything, it explains so much of what I admire about you: your resilience, your independence, your compassion." When Nathaniel entered minutes later, Bella was alone, standing by the window watching Benjamin's retreating figure in the moonlight. "Everything all right?" her father asked. "I told him," she said simply, "about being found at the church, about you taking me in." Nathaniel moved to stand beside her. "And," he said, "it explained a lot about me." She turned to face him. "Why have you never wanted me to find my birth parents, to know where I came from?" The question seemed to age him before her eyes. He sank into his chair, suddenly looking every one of his 45 years and more. "Would you believe me if I said I thought it would bring you pain rather than answers?" "Is that the only reason?" Nathaniel was silent for a long moment. "No," he finally admitted. "It was selfish too. I was afraid of losing you." He looked up at her, his eyes filled with an emotion she'd rarely seen there. "You were all I had, Belle, all that mattered." The nakedness of his admission touched something deep in Bella's heart. She knelt beside his chair, taking his weathered hand in hers. "You could never lose me, Pa, not ever. Every parent loses their child eventually, one way or another." His smile was sad but genuine. "It's the natural order of things. Children grow up, build their own lives." "Is that what you want for me? To leave?" "I want you to live, Bella, really live, not just exist in the shadow of my life." He squeezed her hand. "Whether that's doctoring in Roswell or Denver or riding the rails with young Lambert, that's for you to decide. But decide based on your heart's calling, not on what you think you owe me." They sat together in silence as the fire crackled in the grate, each lost in their own thoughts about past and future, about obligations and dreams, about what it meant to truly love someone enough to let them go. The next morning dawned clear and cold, the storm having scrubbed the air clean. Bella rose early, her mind made up about at least one matter. After breakfast, she rode into town alone, heading directly for Dr. Hartman's office on Main Street. The elderly physician was examining a child with a cough when she arrived, but his face brightened when he saw her. "Ah, Miss Xanders, just the person I need. Mrs. Peterson's youngest has a peculiar rash I'd value your opinion on." For the next several hours, Bella assisted with patients, noting symptoms, preparing treatments, and even stitching a nasty cut on a ranch hand's arm while Dr. Hartman dealt with a more serious case. The work absorbed her completely, as it always did, allowing her to set aside her personal concerns temporarily. "You have a gift, my dear," Dr. Hartman said when the last patient had gone. "I've said it before, but it bears repeating. Your hands were made for healing." "That's why I'm here," Bella replied, gathering her courage. "I want to discuss a formal apprenticeship." The doctor's bushy eyebrows rose. "I thought you decided against it. Something about the ranch needing you. Circumstances change. People change." She straightened her shoulders. "I can arrange my time to help Pa with the ranch while training with you. It won't be easy, but it's possible. And Denver, the medical college, one step at a time," she said. "Roswell's growing. This could be where I'm meant to be." She hesitated. "For now, at least, Doctor." Hartman studied her thoughtfully. "This wouldn't have anything to do with that railroad fellow who's been asking about you all over town, would it?" Bella felt heat rise to her cheeks. "Benjamin Lambert is a factor in my thinking, yes, but not in the way you might imagine. No." The old doctor's eyes twinkled. "So he didn't make you realize life might offer more possibilities than you'd considered. You're far too perceptive for your own good," Bella grumbled. "Comes with the territory." He patted her hand. "We'll start tomorrow. Come at 7. Bring your father's copy of Gray's Anatomy. I know he has one. The man may play the simple cowboy, but I've seen his bookshelf." As Bella left the doctor's office, her steps lighter than they'd been in months, she nearly collided with Benjamin coming around the corner. "Miss Xanders," he exclaimed, steadying her with his hands on her shoulders. "Just the person I was hoping to find. Mr. Lambert." She was suddenly acutely aware of his touch, the warmth of his hands through the fabric of her shirt-waist. "I was just arranging an apprenticeship with Dr. Hartman." Benjamin's face lit with genuine pleasure. "That's wonderful news. When do you begin?" "Tomorrow," she said, unable to keep the excitement from her voice. "It's just a start, but every journey begins with a single step," he finished for her. "My father's favorite saying." His hands dropped from her shoulders, but he remained standing close. "I have news as well. The railroad has offered me a permanent position overseeing this section of the line. I'd be based in Roswell, with occasional travel to inspect the tracks." The implications weren't lost on Bella. "You're staying?" "I'm considering it." His eyes held hers steadily. "The position is attractive for several reasons. The territory is beautiful, the town is growing, the work would be challenging." He paused. "And there are personal considerations that make Roswell increasingly appealing." Before Bella could respond, the general store owner called out to Benjamin from across the street, waving papers that required his attention. He excused himself reluctantly. "Would you allow me to escort you to dinner at the hotel restaurant this evening, to celebrate your apprenticeship?" "Your father would be welcome too, of course." "I'll ask him," Bella replied, "but you should know he usually avoids town gatherings when possible." "Then perhaps just the two of us," Benjamin suggested, a hint of uncertainty in his expression. "If that would be proper," Bella smiled. "Dr. Hartman's wife is the most respectable chaperone in town, and she dines at the hotel every Tuesday. I'm sure she'd be delighted to join us." The dinner that evening proved to be a turning point, with Mrs. Hartman's benevolent presence ensuring propriety. Bella and Benjamin were free to converse about everything from medicine to literature, to their hopes for the future. The elderly woman strategically became engrossed in her knitting, whenever the conversation grew particularly personal, allowing them moments of privacy within the public setting. "I've been thinking about what you said regarding home," Bella admitted over dessert. "About it being people rather than place." Benjamin nodded encouragingly. "I've always thought of home as the ranch, as Roswell, but you're right, it's more than that." She traced the rim of her water glass thoughtfully. "It's Pa and what we've built together. It's the feeling of being exactly where I belong, doing what I'm meant to do." "And what are you meant to do, Bella?" Benjamin asked softly. Besides being Nathaniel Xanders' daughter, the question might have offended her days ago, but now she recognized its legitimacy. "Heal people," she answered without hesitation. "Learn everything I can about medicine, maybe teach others someday." She met his gaze directly. "Build something that matters, like a railroad," he suggested, a smile playing at his lips. "Perhaps not quite so literal," she returned. "But yes, something that connects and serves." She hesitated. "What about you? Is the railroad your calling or merely your employment? It started as adventure, a way to see the country, to be part of something bigger than myself." He considered his words carefully. "But over time, it's become more. I believe in what we're building, not just tracks and stations, but connections between communities, opportunities for people who might otherwise remain isolated." Mrs. Hartman pointedly cleared her throat. "It's getting rather late, my dears. Perhaps we should start back." The walk to the doctor's house, where Bella's horse was tethered, was too short for Benjamin's liking. As they said their goodbyes, he took her hand impulsively. "I'd like to call on you again, regularly if you'll permit it." Bella felt a flutter of anticipation in her chest. "I'd like that very much." The weeks that followed established a new pattern in Bella's life. Mornings and most afternoons were spent at Dr. Hartman's office, absorbing medical knowledge like parched earth soaking up rain. Evenings and weekends were divided between ranch work and increasingly frequent visits from Benjamin, who made good on his promise to accept the permanent position with the railroad. Nathaniel watched the budding courtship with a mixture of pride and wistfulness. He genuinely liked Benjamin, whose straightforward manner and evident respect for Bella earned his approval. But as the young man's presence in their lives became more established, Nathaniel couldn't help feeling the first stirrings of the loss he'd always known would come. "You're brooding again," Bella observed one evening as they sat on the porch after Benjamin had departed. Fall was settling over the territory, bringing earlier sunsets and a crispness to the air that hinted at winter's approach. "Just thinking," Nathaniel replied. "Remembering." "About what?" "The first time I held you." His voice softened with the memory. "You were so tiny, couldn't have been more than a day or two old, but you had such a grip, wrapped your whole hand around my finger and wouldn't let go." He looked out at the darkening land. "Felt like a sign." Bella leaned her head against his shoulder, as she had countless times throughout her childhood. "Best decision you ever made, taking in a foundling." "Never had a moment's regret," he assured her. "Not one. Even when I was 15 and thought I knew everything about running this ranch better than you did," he chuckled. "Even then, though that was a trying year, I'll grant you." They sat in comfortable silence until Bella spoke again, her voice more hesitant. "Benjamin asked about my mother today." "My birth mother." Nathaniel stiffened slightly. "What did you tell him? The truth? That all I have is the locket," she paused, "and that I've never tried to find her. Does he think you should?" "He thinks I should do whatever brings me peace." She shifted to look at her father's profile. "What do you think, Pa, after all these years? Should I try to find her?" Nathaniel was silent for so long Bella thought he might not answer. Finally, he sighed heavily. "I can't answer that for you, Belle. I wish I could." He turned to meet her gaze. "But I can tell you this: whoever left you on those church steps gave you the only thing of value they had to give. That locket wasn't cheap trinket. It belonged to someone who cared enough to send a piece of themselves with you, even if they couldn't keep you themselves. "You've never said that before," Bella whispered, surprised by the revelation. "You've always avoided talking about it." "Because I was afraid," he admitted. "Afraid you'd want to find them more than you wanted to stay with me." "Oh, Pa," Bella's eyes filled with tears. "Never, not ever." "I know that now." He wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "And if you want to search, I'll help you. Benjamin, too, I expect. Man's got connections through that railroad that could be useful." The conversation marked a shift in their relationship, a move toward a more equal footing where Bella was not just Nathaniel's daughter, but a woman making her own choices about her future. It also cemented something in Bella's feelings toward Benjamin, who had somehow catalyzed this evolution without pushing or demanding. As October gave way to November, Benjamin became such a fixture at the Xanders ranch that his absence was more notable than his presence. He helped with repairs after an early snowstorm damaged one of the outbuildings, contributed a collection of medical texts to Bella's growing library, and even persuaded the taciturn Nathaniel to share stories of his bounty hunting days that Bella had never heard. The three of them developed an easy companionship that surprised all of Roswell. The mysterious cowboy who'd raised an orphan alone, the ambitious young doctor in training, and the educated railroad man made an unlikely trio. But their genuine affection for one another was evident to anyone who saw them together. It was Benjamin who first raised the subject of marriage, though not in the way Bella might have expected. They were riding back from inspecting a section of track that crossed Nathaniel's property when he broached the topic. "I've been thinking about the future," he said, guiding his horse alongside hers. "The railroad's plans for Roswell include a proper hospital. Dr. Hartman's already been approached about heading it." "He hasn't mentioned that to me," Bella replied, surprised. "It's still in the planning stages." "But it would mean opportunities for trained medical personnel." He glanced at her. "Including a woman doctor if she were properly qualified. That's years away, Benjamin." "Yes." He slowed his horse, forcing her to do the same. "But I'm a patient man. I can wait while you complete your training with Dr. Hartman, perhaps attend medical college for a year or two. The railroad would still be here when you returned." Bella studied him, understanding the unspoken question. "And would you still be here?" "I would." His certainty was absolute. "If I had reason to believe my waiting would not be in vain." The implication hung in the air between them, neither quite ready to speak the words directly but both aware of the commitment being discussed. "Benjamin," Bella began carefully, "are you asking me to consider a future with you?" "I'm asking if such a consideration would be welcome," he clarified. "I would never presume to ask for promises before you've had the chance to pursue your ambitions." The thoughtfulness of his approach touched her deeply. Other men had proposed to Bella over the years, usually local ranchers' sons, who saw her as a convenient addition to their holdings rather than a person with dreams of her own. Benjamin was offering something entirely different: partnership, respect, and the freedom to become fully herself before joining her life to his. "It would be welcome," she said softly. "Very welcome indeed." The smile that broke across his face was like sunrise. Without dismounting, he reached across the space between their horses and took her hand, bringing it to his lips in a gesture that made her heart race despite its propriety. "Then I shall wait," he promised, "and count myself the most fortunate of men." The understanding between them deepened over the following weeks. Benjamin spoke with Nathaniel formally, not to ask for Bella's hand immediately but to make his intentions clear. Nathaniel, to Bella's relief, gave his wholehearted blessing. "He's a good man," her father said afterward. "Reminds me a bit of myself at that age." though with considerably better prospects and far less trouble dogging his heels. As Christmas approached, Bella divided her time between her medical studies, ranch work, and preparations for the holiday. Benjamin would be joining them for Christmas dinner, his first major holiday away from his family in Kansas. The significance of his choice to remain in Roswell rather than travel home was not lost on either Bella or Nathaniel. The holiday was everything Bella had hoped for and more. Benjamin arrived early, arms laden with gifts, practical items for the ranch, rare medical books for Bella, and for Nathaniel, a finely crafted saddle that must have cost a month's wages. "This is too much," the older man protested, running his hands over the tooled leather. "Not nearly enough," Benjamin replied seriously. "For the man who raised such an extraordinary daughter, I could give you every saddle from here to Kansas City and still be in your debt." Nathaniel's eyes grew suspiciously bright. "Well, it's fine craftsmanship, thank you." Bella's gift to Benjamin was more modest, but no less meaningful, a hand-stitched leather portfolio for his railroad documents, with his initials burned into the cover. "So you'll have something of me with you on your travels," she explained as he admired her handiwork. "It's perfect," he said, his voice husky with emotion. "Just like its maker." The day passed in a haze of good food, shared stories, and the comfortable warmth of being with people who truly understood and valued one another. As evening fell, Benjamin excused himself briefly, returning with one last package that he handed to Bella. "I saved this for last," he explained, suddenly appearing nervous. Well, you'll see." Bella unwrapped the small box carefully, gasping when she opened it to find a delicate silver chain bearing a pendant that matched her mother's locket, exactly a rose in full bloom, the details exquisitely rendered in silver. "How did you?" she began, looking up at him in wonder. "I had a jeweler in Santa Fe make a casting from your original," Benjamin explained. "I thought you might like to wear this one while keeping the original safe." He hesitated. "And perhaps someday, if we have a daughter of our own, you might pass the original to her, along with its story." The thoughtfulness of the gift, the way it honored both her unknown past and her possible future, brought tears to Bella's eyes. "It's the most meaningful gift I've ever received," she whispered. Nathaniel cleared his throat, rising from his chair. "Think I'll check on the horses," he mumbled, clearly giving them a moment of privacy. Once they were alone, Benjamin took Bella's hands in his. "I know we agreed to wait until your training is further along, and we will, if that's still what you want. But I find I can't wait another day to ask properly." He dropped to one knee before her chair. "Bella Louise Xanders, will you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife? Not today, not tomorrow, but when the time is right for both of us." Bella felt as though her heart might burst with happiness. "Yes," she said simply. "Yes, I will." When Nathaniel returned some time later, he found them sitting side by side before the fire, their hands entwined, Bella's head resting on Benjamin's shoulder. The new pendant gleamed at her throat. "I take it congratulations are in order," he said, his voice gruff but pleased. "She's agreed to marry me," Benjamin confirmed, his face alight with joy. "Though we'll wait until she's completed at least part of her medical training." "Sensible." Nathaniel nodded approvingly. "Never known my daughter to rush into anything important." He crossed to the sideboard and poured 3 small glasses of whiskey, a rarity he usually reserved for special occasions. "A toast, then. To new beginnings, and to family, the ones we're born with, the ones who find us, and the ones we create ourselves." As they clinked glasses, Bella felt a sense of completion she'd never known before. The girl abandoned on church steps had found not just one family in the cowboy who'd claimed her as his own, but now a second in the man who looked at her, as if she were the most precious thing in creation. Spring brought significant changes to Roswell and to the Xanders ranch. The railroad officially established its regional headquarters in town, bringing with it an influx of new residents, businesses, and opportunities. Dr. Hartman received formal approval to begin planning the hospital Benjamin had mentioned, with construction scheduled to begin the following year. For Bella, the most exciting development came in the form of a letter from the Women's Medical College of Pennsylvania, offering her admission for the fall term with a scholarship that would cover half her expenses. Dr. Hartman had written to his former colleague there, sending samples of Bella's work and a glowing recommendation. "This is it, Belle," Nathaniel said when she showed him the letter, his voice a mixture of pride and wistfulness. "Your chance to become the doctor you were meant to be." "Philadelphia is so far," she murmured, the reality of the distance suddenly daunting. "I'd be gone for years. Distance doesn't matter much these days, not with the railroad." Nathaniel smiled faintly. "And I suspect a certain railroad man might find reasons to inspect the eastern lines more frequently than strictly necessary." Benjamin, when told of the offer, reacted with unrestrained enthusiasm. "You must accept," he insisted. "It's the finest women's medical program in the country." "But our plans remain exactly as they were," he assured her. "I'll wait. We'll write. I'll visit when I can." His hands framed her face gently. "Did you think I'd ask you to give up this opportunity? That I'd be the kind of man who would hold you back from becoming everything you're capable of being?" "No," she admitted. "That's why I love you." It was the first time she'd said the words directly, though they'd been implied in 100 other ways over the months of their courtship. Benjamin's eyes widened before his face transformed with joy. "Say that again," he requested, his voice barely above a whisper. "I love you, Benjamin Lambert," Bella repeated, more confidently this time. "With all my heart." "And I love you, Bella Xanders," he returned, drawing her into his arms. "Enough to wait however long it takes, to travel however far is necessary, to build whatever kind of life will allow you to fulfill your calling." Their engagement was formally announced the following Sunday after church services, to the surprise of almost no one in Roswell. The town had watched their courtship with approving eyes, seeing in it a symbol of the community's own progression from frontier outpost to established settlement. As preparations for Bella's departure to Philadelphia began, Nathaniel found himself increasingly reflective about the past and future. One evening in late April, as Bella sorted through books to determine which she would take east, he approached her with a small wooden box she'd never seen before. "There's something you should have," he said, sitting beside her on the floor amid the piles of texts. "Something I should have given you years ago." Inside the box was a folded sheet of paper, yellowed with age but carefully preserved. Bella opened it with trembling fingers to find a letter written in a flowing feminine hand. "To whoever finds my daughter," it began. "I cannot keep her, though it breaks my heart to leave her. Her father is dead, killed in the war, and I have no means to support a child. I am going west to find work, but the journey is too dangerous for an infant. I leave her with this locket, which was my mother's before me. It is the only thing of value I possess. If you are kind enough to take her in, please tell her someday that she was loved, that she was wanted, that giving her up was the hardest thing I've ever done. Her name is Bella, for she is beautiful. May God protect her and lead her to a better life than I could provide. Margaret Rose Wilson, April 18, 1873. Bella looked up at her father, tears streaming down her face. "You've had this all along," Nathaniel nodded, his own eyes damp. "Father Moore gave it to me when I took you. Said I should decide when you were ready to know." He swallowed hard. "I kept telling myself you weren't ready yet. Truth is, I wasn't ready. Selfish of me." "No," Bella whispered, clutching the letter. Not selfish, just human. She reread the words. She loved me, she named me. Of course she did, Nathaniel said gently. How could she not? Bella carefully refolded the letter, her mind racing with implications. Do you think she's still alive? That I could find her? It's possible. The name's not unusual, but Benjamin might be able to help through railroad records. They keep lists of passengers, especially women traveling alone. He took her hand. If you want to look, we'll support you, but I want you to be prepared. It's been nearly 19 years. She may not have survived the journey west. I understand. Bella tucked the letter back into the box. I need to think about this, about what it means for me, for us. She looked at her father, the only parent she'd ever known, the man who'd shaped her life through his daily example of quiet strength and unwavering love. Thank you for keeping this, for giving me the truth. You deserve to have it, he said simply. Always did. In the weeks that followed, Bella shared the letter with Benjamin, who immediately offered to use his connections to search for any trace of Margaret Wilson in railroad records. The task would be challenging. Thousands of women had traveled west in the years after the Civil War, many under assumed names or remarrying along the way, but not impossible. Even if we never find her, Benjamin said as they discussed possibilities, you have something precious now. Knowledge of where you came from, proof that you were loved from the beginning. I already knew I was loved, Bella replied, her gaze going to Nathaniel as he worked in the garden visible through the window. I've been loved every day of my life. Summer passed in a flurry of preparations. Bella completed her formal apprenticeship with Dr. Hartman, who pronounced her more qualified than many medical students he'd taught in his younger days at university. Benjamin traveled frequently, establishing the procedures for the section of railroad he would oversee in his new permanent position. Nathaniel quietly renovated the ranch house, adding modern conveniences that would make it more comfortable when he was living there alone. The search for Margaret Wilson yielded tantalizing fragments but no definitive answers. Railroad records showed several women by that name traveling west between 1873 and 1875. One had disembarked in Colorado, another continued to California, and a third was listed as having taken employment with a mining company in Nevada. Without more information, it was impossible to know which, if any, was Bella's mother. We'll keep looking, Benjamin promised. Even while you're in Philadelphia, there are investigators who specialize in finding people. I can hire one. But as her departure date approached, Bella found herself less focused on the past and more on the future she was building. The mystery of her origins would always be part of her story, but it no longer defined her in the way it once might have. The evening before she was to leave for Philadelphia, Bella sat on the porch with Nathaniel and Benjamin, watching the sunset paint the distant mesas with gold and crimson. The three people she loved most in the world, her father, her fiancé, and the ranch that had been her only home, all gathered in one place for what would be the last time in years. I'm scared, she admitted, breaking the comfortable silence. What if I'm not good enough? What if I can't do it? You can, Nathaniel said firmly. You're the strongest person I know, Belle. Always have been from the day I found you. And you won't be alone, Benjamin added, his hand finding hers. We'll be with you in every letter, every telegram, every moment of support we send across the miles. Bella looked between them, the aging cowboy who'd claimed an abandoned infant as his own and built his entire life around her welfare, and the young railroad man who'd shown her it was possible to love someone without constraining them. Two very different men who had one crucial thing in common. They both loved her enough to help her become her truest self, whatever the cost to themselves. I'll make you both proud, she promised. Already have, Nathaniel replied gruffly. Every single day since you came into my life." The train journey east was Bella's first significant travel experience, and despite her nervousness about the future awaiting her, she couldn't help being excited by the changing landscape outside her window. Benjamin accompanied her as far as Kansas City, where he had railroad business and where they would say their first extended goodbye. "It's only temporary," he reminded her as they stood on the platform. "I'll visit at Christmas, and you'll be home for the summer." 8 months, Bella said, struggling to keep her voice steady. "It seems like forever. It will pass before we know it." He drew her slightly away from the crowd into the shadow of a pillar where they could have a modicum of privacy. "I have something for you." From his pocket, he withdrew a small velvet box. Inside was a simple gold ring set with a modest diamond flanked by tiny sapphires. "I know we agreed to wait until after your studies," he said as Bella's eyes widened. "And we will. But I wanted you to have this now to wear or keep as you see fit as a tangible reminder of my promise to you." "It's beautiful," she whispered, touching it reverently. "But I didn't expect—" "You don't have to wear it," Benjamin assured her. "I understand if you'd rather wait until our plans are more definite." Bella looked up at him, seeing the vulnerability beneath his usual confidence. "Will you put it on me? I want to wear it." The smile that broke across his face was like sunshine after rain. He took the ring and slipped it onto her finger, where it fit as if made for her. "Now everyone will know you're spoken for," he said, a hint of possessiveness coloring his tone. "I've been spoken for since the day you rode onto our ranch," she replied, stretching up to kiss him farewell as the conductor called for boarding. Philadelphia was everything Roswell was not: crowded, fast-paced, filled with people of every description hurrying about their business. The Women's Medical College was a revelation to Bella, who had never imagined being surrounded by so many women who shared her passion for medicine. Her classmates came from across the country and even abroad, each with a unique story of how they had defied convention to pursue their calling. The work was challenging beyond anything she'd anticipated. Even with Dr. Hartman's excellent training, Bella found herself studying late into the night to keep pace with the rigorous curriculum. Her letters home were filled with descriptions of cadaver dissections, chemical experiments, and diagnostic puzzles that both exhilarated and exhausted her. Nathaniel's replies were shorter but no less cherished simple accounts of ranch life, local gossip, and occasional wry observations about Benjamin's increased presence around the property. "Boys taken to helping with repairs every weekend," one letter noted. "Claims it's to learn ranching. Suspect it's really to keep an eye on me for you." Benjamin's letters came most frequently of all detailed accounts of the railroad's progress, stories of mutual acquaintances in Roswell, and always, without fail, reminders of his love and support for her studies. He included newspaper clippings about medical advancements, sent textbooks he found in Denver or Santa Fe that might supplement her studies, and occasionally tucked pressed wildflowers between the pages as reminders of home. Despite the distance, Bella felt their relationship deepening through their correspondence in ways that might not have been possible had they remained physically close. On paper, they shared thoughts, fears, and dreams they might have been too reserved to voice aloud. By the time Benjamin visited at Christmas, Bella felt she knew him more intimately than ever before. His week-long stay in Philadelphia was a whirlwind of activity. Bella proudly introduced him to her professors and classmates, showed him the city's landmarks, and basked in the simple pleasure of having him physically present after months of separation. They attended a concert, dined at restaurants far more elegant than anything in Roswell, and spent long hours simply walking together, reconnecting. "You've changed," he observed on their last evening together as they sat in the small parlor of the boarding house where Bella lived. "There's a confidence in you that wasn't there before." "Is that good or bad?" she asked, suddenly self-conscious. "It's wonderful." His eyes were warm with admiration. "You're becoming more fully yourself. It's exactly what I hoped for you." He took her hand, running his thumb over the engagement ring she wore on a chain around her neck during classes and hospital rounds. "Does this new version of Bella still want the future we planned?" "More than ever," she assured him, "but with some modifications, perhaps." Benjamin raised an eyebrow. "Such as?" "I've been offered a research position for the summer working with Dr. Elizabeth Shaw on her studies of childhood diseases. It would mean not returning to Roswell until fall." She watched his face carefully. "I'd understand if you objected." "Object to you advancing your education and career?" Benjamin shook his head. "Never. I'll miss seeing you, of course, but this sounds like an exceptional opportunity." "You're not disappointed, Bella." He lifted her chin gently. "I fell in love with your mind and spirit as much as your heart and face. How could I be disappointed to see you excel?" When they parted the next day, the pain of separation was eased by the absolute certainty that they were building something worth the temporary sacrifice, a partnership based on mutual respect and shared purpose, even if their individual paths diverged at times. Spring brought unexpected news from Roswell. Nathaniel had suffered a fall from his horse while checking fence lines, resulting in a broken leg and several cracked ribs. He was recovering, Benjamin's letter assured her, but the incident had highlighted his increasing vulnerability living alone on the remote ranch. "Don't worry yourself sick," Benjamin wrote. "I've arranged for Miguel Vasquez to stay at the ranch until your father's back on his feet. But we should discuss more permanent arrangements when you return. He's too proud to admit it, but managing alone is becoming difficult." The news shook Bella deeply. In her mind, her father had always been invincible, the strong, capable man who could handle any crisis from flash floods to marauding wolves without breaking a sweat. The thought of him aging, becoming frail, was almost impossible to accept. She wrote to Nathaniel immediately, offering to return home despite her academic commitments. His reply came by telegram. "Absolutely not. Stop. Merely a broken bone. Stop. Finish your term. Stop. That is an order. Stop. Love, Pa." The directness of the message made Bella smile through her tears. Even injured and in pain, Nathaniel remained determined that her education would not be interrupted. It was so characteristic of the man who had raised her, putting her needs above his own comfort without hesitation. Benjamin kept her informed of Nathaniel's recovery through regular letters and occasional telegrams. The picture that emerged was of a man frustrated by his temporary limitations, but slowly healing under the combined supervision of Dr. Hartman and Benjamin himself, who had taken to spending most nights at the ranch to ensure Nathaniel didn't attempt too much too soon. "Your father and I have come to an understanding," Benjamin wrote in late May. "When you complete your first year, we'll discuss the three of us living at the ranch together after our marriage. The house could be expanded easily enough, and with the railroad office in town, I can divide my time between both responsibilities. We could provide the support your father needs while maintaining our independence. Consider it, my love. It might be the solution we've been seeking." The proposal was unexpected but oddly perfect. Bella had been quietly worrying about how to balance her future medical practice, her marriage, and her father's care. Benjamin's suggestion offered a path that would allow all three to coexist. When Bella finally returned to Roswell in September of 1892, after 15 months away, she found both the town and her loved ones changed in subtle but significant ways. The railroad had transformed Roswell from a sleepy territorial outpost to a bustling hub of commerce. New buildings lined Main Street, the population had nearly doubled, and construction on the hospital had already begun on the north end of town. Nathaniel had recovered from his injuries, but moved more carefully now, with a slight limp that became more pronounced when he was tired. His hair had gone completely gray, and new lines etched his weathered face. Yet his eyes lit with the same love and pride they always had when he swept Bella into a crushing embrace at the train station. "Look at you," he said, holding her at arm's length. "All grown up and educated. Your mother would be proud." It was the first time he'd ever referred to Margaret Wilson as Bella's mother so directly, and the acknowledgement brought unexpected tears to her eyes. "We found her," Benjamin said quietly as they loaded Bella's trunks into the wagon. "Or rather, we found what happened to her." At the ranch, over coffee at the kitchen table where they'd shared so many meals, Benjamin and Nathaniel explained their discovery. Through a combination of railroad records, newspaper archives, and the help of a Pinkerton detective Benjamin had hired, they had traced Margaret Wilson's journey west. She had indeed taken work with a mining company in Nevada, serving as a cook and laundress at a silver mine near Virginia City. "She did well for herself," Nathaniel said gently. "Eventually married the mine's foreman, a widower named James Collier. They had 2 children together, a boy and a girl." "I have siblings," Bella whispered, the concept almost too large to grasp. "Had," Benjamin corrected softly. The mine collapsed in 1880. Margaret and James were both killed. The children went to his family in California. The news settled over Bella like a heavy blanket. Her birth mother, the woman who had loved her enough to seek a better life for them both, had found that life only to lose it tragically. There would be no tearful reunion, no answers to the questions Bella had carried her whole life. "There's more," Nathaniel said, reaching for a folder on the sideboard. The detective found this in the Virginia City Records office. Inside was a copy of a letter Margaret had written to St. Joseph's Church in Roswell in 1876, inquiring about the baby girl she had left there 3 years earlier. The church had apparently replied that the child had been adopted by a good man and was thriving, but provided no further details in accordance with Father Moore's promise to Nathaniel to protect their privacy. "She tried to find you," Benjamin said quietly. "When she was established, when she could have offered you a home, she never forgot you." Bella traced the copied words with trembling fingers. "Thank you for finding this," she said finally, looking between the 2 men. "Both of you. It means everything to know she remembered me, that she wanted me if she could have managed it." "Of course she did," Nathaniel said gruffly. "How could anyone not want you, Belle?" That evening, sitting on the porch as they had countless times before, Nathaniel gave Bella one final piece of her history. "I saw her," he admitted. "Your mother, just for a moment from a distance. She was hurrying away from the church when I arrived that morning. Young woman in a faded blue dress, hair the same color as yours." He looked out at the land he'd worked for nearly 2 decades. "She was crying, looked back once at the church door before she disappeared around the corner. Why didn't you tell me this before?" Didn't seem important, knowing what she looked like. What mattered was that she loved you enough to make sure you were safe before she left. He reached over to take her hand. "And I've spent every day since making sure her trust wasn't misplaced." The story of Margaret Wilson would always be part of Bella's history. But as she sat between the 2 men who had shaped her present and future, her father and her fiancé, she knew with absolute certainty where she belonged. The following spring, as Roswell's new hospital neared completion, Bella Louise Xanders married Benjamin Thomas Lambert in a simple ceremony at St. Joseph's Church, the same building where she had been left as a newborn 20 years earlier. Dr. Hartman gave her away, a concession Nathaniel had insisted upon after the doctor's pivotal role in her medical education. Nathaniel himself stood as Benjamin's best man, completing the circle of the three most important people in Bella's life. "I found you on these steps," Nathaniel whispered as he and Bella prepared to enter the church. "Best thing that ever happened to me." "To me too, Pa," she replied, squeezing his arm. "I wouldn't change any of it." Their vows were traditional but heartfelt, spoken with the deep conviction of people who had already proven their commitment through years of supporting each other's dreams across distance and difficulty. When Benjamin slipped the gold band alongside Bella's engagement ring, his hands were steady but his eyes shone with unshed tears. "I will love you through every chapter of your life," he promised, adding words beyond the standard ceremony. "As you pursue medicine, as we build our home, as we grow old together. Your dreams are my dreams, your joy my joy. And I will love you through every mile of track you lay," Bella responded, her own addition making the congregation chuckle. "Through every challenge we face, through every triumph we celebrate. Your heart is my home, wherever we may be." The reception was held at the ranch, which had been transformed by Benjamin's family who had traveled from Kansas for the occasion. His mother, 3 brothers, 2 sisters, and numerous nieces and nephews filled the property with more life and noise than it had seen in all the years Nathaniel and Bella had lived there. As promised, Benjamin and Bella established their home at the ranch, adding 4 rooms to the original structure to create space for both privacy and togetherness. Nathaniel insisted on maintaining his role in the ranch's operation, though he gradually ceded the more physically demanding tasks to Benjamin, who proved a quick study in the business of cattle raising. Bella divided her time between their expanded medical practice in town, now housed in the new hospital, where she served as Dr. Hartman's associate, and the ranch where she still helped with the books and lighter tasks. The arrangement allowed her to pursue her calling, while maintaining the close connection with Nathaniel that was so important to them both. 2 years after their wedding, as the 19th century drew to a close, Bella gave birth to their first child, a son they named Nathan Thomas Lambert, honoring both Nathaniel and Benjamin's father. The joy that filled the ranch house with the baby's arrival was magnified by the knowledge of how much this continuation of family meant to a man who had once been alone in the world, until he found an abandoned baby on church steps. "Full circle," Nathaniel murmured the first time he held his grandson. "From just you and me to all this." On Nathan's christening day, Bella wore both pendants, her birth mother's silver locket and the matching one Benjamin had given her years before. As Father Moore's successor blessed the child in the same church where Bella had been left and found, she felt a profound sense of completion. The abandoned infant had become part of a family that expanded with each passing year, rooted in love rather than blood, in choice rather than chance. "I'll be your family," Nathaniel had promised a helpless baby 2 decades earlier, and he had kept that promise through every hardship, every joy, every change that life had brought. Now, as Bella watched him cradle her son with the same tenderness he had once shown her, she understood that family was not just something you were born into, or even something you found. It was something you built, day by day, choice by choice, love by love. As the new century dawned, bringing with it automobiles and telephones and all manner of modern marvels to the once remote territory, the expanded Lambert-Xanders household adapted and thrived. Bella's medical practice grew as Roswell continued to expand, eventually taking over from Dr. Hartman when he retired. Benjamin's position with the railroad provided stability while allowing him to support Bella's career and remain involved in their growing family. Nathan was joined 2 years later by a sister, Margaret Rose Lambert, named for the grandmother she would never know but whose legacy of courage and sacrifice had made her existence possible. And 3 years after that, twins Emma and Elijah completed their family, filling the ranch house with the chaos and joy of 4 children under the age of 7. Through it all, Nathaniel remained the family's cornerstone, teaching his grandchildren to ride, telling them stories of the old days, showing them by example what it meant to live with integrity and purpose. Though his health gradually declined with age, his spirit remained undiminished, his love for Bella and her children a constant in their ever-changing world. On Bella's 30th birthday, as they sat on the porch watching her children play in the yard where she had once played alone, Nathaniel gave her one final gift, a journal he had kept since the day he found her, documenting their life together from his perspective. "Been writing in this nearly 20 years, he said gruffly, embarrassed by the emotion of the moment. "Thought you should have it, for the children someday so they know where they came from." Bella opened the leather-bound volume with trembling hands, reading the first entry. April 19, 1873. Found a baby girl today at St. Joseph's. Father Moore wanted to send her to an orphanage. Couldn't let that happen. Told her I'd be her family. Don't know the first thing about raising a child, but I'll learn. She deserves that much. The simple words brought tears to her eyes. "Oh, Pa." "Nothing fancy," he said, shrugging. "Just wanted to remember things as they happened." That night, after the children were asleep, Bella showed the journal to Benjamin. Together they read through the careful chronicle of their shared history, Nathaniel's pride in Bella's first steps, his worry during childhood illnesses, his fierce determination to give her every opportunity despite their modest means, his conflicted feelings when Benjamin first entered their lives, and finally, his profound joy at seeing Bella fulfill her potential as a doctor, wife, and mother. "He's given you everything," Benjamin said softly, touching the weathered pages. "His whole life." "And I've given him mine," Bella replied with absolute certainty. "We found each other when we both needed family most. Everything else, you, the children, my work, it all grew from that moment on the church steps." As they closed the journal, Benjamin wrapped his arms around his wife, both of them gazing out the window to where Nathaniel sat on the porch, keeping watch over their sleeping household as he had done for Bella all her life. "I'll be your family," he had promised a helpless infant, and from that single act of kindness had grown a legacy of love that would endure long after all of them were gone, a testament to the family they had built together, choice by choice, day by day, love by love.